You've been a part of like obviously some pretty historical stuff in radio. You pretty much you signed on Real 92.3 in LA, which was a very crazy thing to do at the time because there is a heritage station here that nobody would ever really think to fuck with. Also, you were very instrumental in the Breakfast Club, right?
I launched Power 105.1.
So you launched Power 105.1.
Yeah.
At the time when you launched it, it was Ed Lover in the morning?
Yep, Ed and Dr. Dre, the other Dr. Dre.
Yep, the other one.
And then we went through a couple of iterations of morning shows. I think Tigger was doing mornings at one time. Then we had, I think before that, it might have been Star and Buck Wild.
Yeah, how was that? What were those calls like?
I tell everybody all the time, man, like he and I had a great relationship, man. There was never any malice between us. He gave people a hard time, but like me and him were good, man.
Yeah.
Like I remember he and I having a conversation one time about how many times he was used the N-word on his show. Because at this time he was doing it like every 2 seconds.
Did you say like, hey, you got 5 a show?
No, I vaguely remember the conversation, but I remember him negotiating it down to 25.
25 times a show?
25 times an hour. An hour a show. It was
Which is kind of crazy because technically you can say it on the radio.
Yeah.
Technically you can.
But it wasn't an advertiser-friendly term
for
to use,
sure,
that you might imagine. And so I remember
it's bad for business to use that. Yeah.
I remember he and I settled on that, and then it progressively went back up to 40, and then then those things ended crazy. I don't ever want to take credit for the Breakfast Club hire because it was actually Cadillac Jack. I remember him calling me and telling me I knew who Charlamagne was, I knew who Envy was because of what happened with Star. And I was aware who Angela was. And at the time the show started, it was the very beginning of PPM measurement.
Early PPM,
Early PPM measurement. There were a lot of misconceptions about PPM measurement. And the biggest one was that you should know if a show is a hit within weeks.
Also, for people who don't know what PPM is, it's a meter that tells radio stations their ratings.
Exactly.
It's an imperfect system.
And before that, it used to be a diary. So you would get a diary and you would write down what you thought you listened to versus what you actually listened to.
Much easier way to program.
Yeah, absolutely. Much easier way. So the show started, remember Cadillac and I talking about it. I thought it was a great idea, but it didn't hit as quickly as people thought. And we had done something similar in Chicago with a morning show, and I remember that morning show took a minute. So after a few months when it didn't hit, I was called in for a meeting in New York, and there was actually a thought of maybe doing something different. And I remember...
After a few months?
After a few months, yeah,
okay.
Because that was the misconception at the time. But there was a chemistry between the three that was like nothing I'd ever seen.
Right.
And I remember being in a room with them, just kind of like, we just talking and just like, man, like if this gets on the radio and we give it time and we promote it, it's gonna be crazy. I had no idea what it became, but yeah,
I know you fielded calls for stuff I've said before. At least I know Ayo has about artists. Have you ever had to deal with blowback for like early Charlamagne stuff where they're like, "Yo," and I know before Real, you're obviously based in Jacksonville, but like. I feel like you're kind of the face of like who the industry talks to when it comes to iHeart shit on the hip hop side. You are that, literally. So was there ever any like...
Always. Especially at the very early, different iterations of Charlamagne.
Yeah.
I think early on, he was raw.
Raw.
And so I get those complaints. Obviously, back in the day before Charlamagne Star, it was routine, man. Like NAACP would want me to come. I'm like, I'm not coming in for the meetings. Like, nah, man. Like if you took the show locally, I would always tell them, like, you took the show, you know what you got, like, you got to handle it. Like, I'm not flying across the country and meeting with the, United Negro College Fund, NAACP, every city because of
every city that was affiliated
with the show because they were hot, But yeah, I mean, there were complaints. I mean, it's part of the culture.
I'm just wondering if like you look at your phone and like it says Diddy's calling, right, and then Diddy's like, yo, Yo, Doc, what's
Yeah,
this is fucking. By the way, that's just the name. I'm
yeah,
just,
yeah.
you know.
I mean, it still happens to this
Yeah.
day. Yeah. I mean, I think some people think that that's what we do. We set them up for the, to get the clip on social media, which I don't think you guys intentionally do. I think
Nah.
it just happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get them a lot.